welcome back to Pain2Performance. Today we're joined by Kelly Mann. We're going to go through Rehab and RPE today, and I guess seeing if there's any changes or major changes when dealing with lifters that experience pain, and if there's changes to their program that need to be done. Because I guess from a rehab perspective, there's a fair few things that we look at, I guess, when integrating more rehab components into a program versus, I guess, a lifter's program peaking in towards a comp or just general training in that sense. So I guess to start us off, like dealing with a lot of lifters in your experience, what's sort of like things that you look for in their program when they are experiencing niggles and aches, like you look to change for, if that makes sense?
Load management. Yeah, so across a microcycle, you're looking at a load management throughout the week, right? You're looking at whether or not the lifter can recover from it or if they are recovering from it. So if they're experiencing niggles or aches and pains at a particular time of the week or after a big session or a few sessions in a row, it's probably going to be a load management issue. So they're pushing too hard in one or two of the days, or not hard enough earlier in the block and then too hard at the end. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Depending
on the niggle, like, you know, if they pick up a deadlift and cook their back, whoops, it's more like that's a bit different. But if it's like a repeated issue, then it's most likely a load management problem on their end, and the end of communication on set RPEs, what they're expected to hit for their RPEs, load drops on main lifts. They could be doing too much in their back off. So it's just all about looking at that from a data perspective.
Yeah, okay. I guess from my perspective and personal experience, I am quite bad at pushing my bench on every day.
You do that every day?
More like I did in the past.
Welcome to every fucking lifter in the world.
I guess
legit.
In terms of that, it's sort of like I ran
Stop
to the...
it.
Yeah, exactly.
You're an idiot.
Stop it.
Because what I found is that like it just doesn't progress. You just
and that's when niggles will come in with shoulders and stuff. So Barra is a fantastic example to use for this one. She pushes her sevens on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday stay static, Saturday goes up.
Yeah.
It's only the sevens that go up. Meg's quite similar, and they both have big arches. If Barra pushes the middle days, she gets sore shoulders and a sore back because it's just too much leg drive for her. So she can push 100 kilos easy. So I just fix them at 100.
Yeah.
And then she can play with the back offs a little bit, but it's the heavy singles that really cook her shoulders.
Yeah.
So that's how we load manage her shoulders.
Okay. And I guess Dave and or Tom, with dealing with lifters in your own experience, what's your management strategies been?
Guess you want to go first, Dave, you being the coach.
Sure, I'll kick it off. So I guess, again, like Kelly mentioned, it's pretty dependent on the actual lifter. So what niggle's present, if it's been a recurring issue in the past. I guess just talking to the lifter, seeing if there are days that feel good or better than others, if there's specific variations that feel better, or if it's at a certain load. So 100 feels fine to bench, but as soon as it goes above 110, then there's pain. So we might adjust rep ranges, things like that. So there's a bunch of ways to go about it before we just say, let's strip it back and let's jump on the rehab train.
Or rehab it, or...
there's a bunch of things you can do and that you can implement straight away to help get a positive result from the jump. And whether that is, just like Kel said, a load management thing, it could just be capping the RPE as well. So keeping the intensity lower so they have an easier time recovering. And you can throw in the accessories around that to try and get the shoulder feeling better for the next couple of sessions that are coming up.
Yeah, that's it. He's knocked it on the head.
Cool.
Yeah.
I guess...
Thanks, Jim.
Oh,
Have you got anything to say? Yours, Tom?
Come on, add in there, mate. I was like, Tom, are you going to chime in?
Because I suppose like every now and then you'll have like periods where you have to kind of keep pushing a little bit, so you may not have like the option to manage load as much. So every now and then, like, you can, I suppose, try and like disperse the load, or even like lean a little bit more into creating a bit more efficiency. So potentially that's where, like, if you're stuck in a position where you got to keep pushing, like you're a week out or something like that, and like it's too early to start the taper, like you can make those little changes where potentially, you know, some of those like small exercises that you do that make you feel better or make you feel like a little bit more movable in a certain position or move a little bit more efficiently, it can disperse that load where you can't actually like manage the load from a programming perspective. So I guess that's something that more Chris and I would do, whereas you guys are more the load management style of things with the programming.
And I guess for Dave and Kelly, when do you both look to refer on for more help as opposed to something that you guys can manage for the athlete. Does that make sense?
Depends on the athlete. So the better I get to know my athletes, the more I know when they're going to have issues. So as I just mentioned before,
yep.
If I know them really well and I've been working with them for a while, I'll just revert back to what I know works for them, and then I'll talk to them about, remember when you go over this amount, then the shoulder niggle will come back. It doesn't mean that you're injured or anything like that, and then load manage from that perspective. If I have, that is me talking in an instance for the top athletes. That's how I manage them. So if I know my top athletes, some of them, when they get to the end of the block, will have issues come up. They're not necessarily issues, it's just they're tired, they're fatigued. Does that make sense? If I've got more of like a gen pop lifter who I know might have a pain in the past, or tends to catastrophize pain quickly, I'll get Tom involved pretty quickly these days. I like to make sure that I'm specialising in one area. And it's not that I don't want to talk to them about their pain. I feel that Tom and yourself are more experienced in that. And so I would rather set their mind at ease and continue with my program and have you guys put your stuff in. Otherwise, I've found in the past when I've tried to go EP and change the program, everything gets messy.
Yeah, it's hard to do both.
It gets messy. There's no data.
Yeah.
Like nothing.
I also think
if I change my RPEs, the data's gone.
Yeah, I also think something to add to that's also important is not just the programming gets messy, but also the relationship can get messy
100%.
in terms of expectations
100%.
and what you actually are to the client or to the athlete.
100%. And then they want to tell me all the time about their aches and pains.
Yeah, and it just drains you.
And it's normal to have, as a human being, it's normal to be tired, and it's normal to have aches and pains every day, right?
Yeah.
So if one of my lifters is telling me every day that they have a sore back, it's going to cloud my judgment on how much I can push them. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I want them to tell me, but they need to know the signs of when it's appropriate to, if that makes sense. Yeah, and then when it's appropriate to go, hey, I think this isn't normal kind of pain, because pain, if you're putting load on your back, man, it's gonna fucking hurt.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard.
Like it's not gonna hurt.
If you're doing 6 weeks in a row of just load jump every week into a comp, you're not gonna feel too crouch hard.
Yeah, but there's times to tell your coach and there's times for the coach to ask. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's the trust involved with working with athletes. I've had athletes not tell me before, and that's only because that they thought that that they couldn't tell me. But I just let them know that they can tell me, and then I still have athletes now that tell me too much, and I explain to them that you're telling me too much, and that this is normal. You're a week and a half out now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that it all depends on who you're working with.
Yeah.
It's just it's just understanding the human being in front of you.
100%.
That's it.
Tom, do you want to explain a bit, I guess, how we would then, if you see a client, integrate what we think is going to work best for them without mucking around with the program too much?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess the biggest thing I try and do is I don't want to add in heaps and heaps of stuff.
Yeah.
I try and make small modifications as much as possible. So that might be just changing how someone does an exercise, or potentially increasing or decreasing how much they're doing. I'll really try and avoid adding too much to the program or changing the program wherever I can, because obviously the program is written for a specific purpose. We want to keep that rolling as much as possible, like Dave was saying, without too much interference with programming in, programming out.
Yeah.
So it's
rehab's the same as performance. If you add 10 exercises and one works, you don't know what the other 9 are doing.
100%.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then if you add it all in there, then they end up not completing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, or going too hard on one thing and not pushing another.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. I guess when, say for example, like at the moment, I guess you already touched on it a bit with leading into competitions.
Yep.
Do you feel like, I guess, needing to adjust RPEs at some point for those that are experiencing, this pain isn't quite normal, if that makes sense?
Depends. It depends on how far out they are. It depends at what level they're at.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Let's use I guess, Tom Chaplin, for example. So he's coming into Nats next
Yep.
week. And I know that his low back has given him issues in the
Yep.
past.
Still is.
Still is?
Yep.
Yeah, so if he's, for example, experiencing something where he's like, you know, I can't pull too well, or I don't feel strong enough to pull, would you adjust?
He won't
program?
be saying that right now.
Yeah.
No, he'll pull no matter what.
Okay.
So that's because that mindset is there for him.
Yep.
That's something he's worked on to get to the level of the athlete he is. So he's not at that intermediate novice level anymore. It doesn't matter how bad it is. He put his hand up not long ago saying, I said I think it'd be good to see Tom. But then he's been working with that, and then on the 300 he felt it, but he didn't let it get to him.
Yep.
Because now he's normalised that experience for himself.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for
and
sure.
doesn't find that experience threatening.
No, that's good.
You get what I mean?
I think that's a good thing that athletes do, I guess, when they get to that certain stage where they, I guess, in a sense, disassociate themselves and think about just pulling it because that's what they need to do to be able to be successful as a lifter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's more about understanding that for him that he's still working through that. Like, it's not something that's going to be, back pain one day, don't have it the next day, I'm fixed kind of thing.
Yeah.
This has been something that's been long-standing for him for many, many years. So he's just getting better at recovering from it mentally. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then that is what helps him get through physically.
Yep.
He just mentioned to me on the fly the other day, we don't need to talk about it anymore.
Cool.
He's got a job to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that's good. I guess, Dave, with clients that you'd be dealing with, do you find that your management is different in that sense, I guess, to their mindset?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, like what Kel mentioned, is the top guys, when they're fighting for podium spots, especially at like nationals level comps, where worlds is on the line, like they're going to have such a mentality where it doesn't matter how they're feeling. They have this one goal in mind, and that's to get to worlds, and nothing's going to stop them from getting there. So it doesn't matter how they're feeling, really. They're going to push through, they're going to do their job, and make sure all the work gets done. I think that can be different for lifters who are a little bit more recreational or not as competitive, or don't have that same sort of drive or mindset to be competitive. And that sort of, I guess, gets adjusted to what we're actually doing. So things I've done in the past is just like splitting up their sets. So if someone's running, 4s or 5s, I might just halve the sets and just add a couple more sets in, just so they're like, I guess, splitting it up. So the same load that they might use for 4s, I might just do doubles instead, and just get them, in and out of the bar a little bit quicker, give them more rest, and just add the sets a little bit. Yeah, and just like, I guess, like get the volume in, but not by jamming like a really hard set of 4 and just make really easy doubles happen instead. Something like that, where you still get the volume in, you still feel like you're getting the work done. It might not be as effective or as efficient, but it might feel nicer for the lifter.
Yeah, I think going back a little bit with the load management thing too, a little bit away from the recreational guys, knowing your athlete helps as well, knowing that they've got that like overload problem, and that's where you have the load management. The first day might be a hard day where they're going to experience some discomfort, whereas then they'll come into the gym in the midweek and it's an easy day, so that can help them just get moving again. For a lot of people, that's just moving again helps them to just get back to pain free, be it recreational or advanced. Does that make sense?
100%. And I guess you see that a lot, not only for the lifters, but also in the rehab sense, where movement is probably just going to be the best thing for them.
Well, it's like most people feel better after they get a pump. Like if
Yeah.
someone has elbow pain, they go and hit some arms, they get big pump in their arms.
Yep.
They go, oh man, my elbows feel great.
And for Tom, it's safety bar squats.
Yeah.
Helps, so he knows it helps, so he knows Wednesday will make him feel better. So that helps his mindset as well. If this day was hard, he would not have a good time this week. And that's just because of Monday is a really tough day for him,
He's got his big pull on Monday.
Well, like Chris has mentioned, you can't progress everything, right? Like if you just burn the candle at both ends, you're gonna run out of things to burn. So
Dave Yates. Love you.
I guess the next thing I want to move into, Kel, is a little bit more with your experience of, I guess, taking and building Megs up into worlds, and then versus Tom and Sam coming into Nats as well now. I guess, is there much difference between things that you experienced with Meg in terms of like niggles, aches and pains and managing that, especially because she's international?
Meg was a tough nut to crack. She's come from a background of a lot of different sports, and she's actually done triathlons and stuff like that. So she's used to pushing through pain. After she had, we're still working with her with it now. After she had her children, her body still hasn't quite come back yet. And she went and did nationals, USAPL nationals 6 months after having the twins, and royally cooked her back, like in a way that's still lingering with her now. So when we first started, I helped her to deadlift pain-free again, and then I became her coach after that. She would still push through pain, thinking that that's how you got to a powerlifting meet, without telling me. And it wasn't until I built her trust up 100% that now she trusts me to be able to tell me if she's not feeling great. Whereas before she would just push through it and overshoot the whole fucking week. Thinking that's how you train for powerlifting. So I've had to teach her how to back down. I'm still doing that now. I think with her though, she's still telling us, and this is where listening to the athlete is super important when it comes to this, she still doesn't feel 100% right in her pelvic floor and her back, and she can't put her finger on why. So going into Worlds and going into Nationals, especially Nationals, she popped her rib both meets 2 weeks out. With her, I know her quite well and we talk every day. She doesn't catastrophize. She's not the type of person to catastrophize, so I can't get much out of her. She'll just push through till she can't push through anymore. And then at that national prep where she popped her rib, she decided she wasn't going to do that anymore, because she realized it wasn't a great mindset to be in. When it comes to that, I don't try and fix anything with her. I let her work through it on her own. She is the type of lifter who's super autonomous, where she went and got an x-ray and a scan without even telling me. I had no idea. But it's not a big deal because she doesn't feel like it's a big deal. Whereas other people in general will be like, oh my God, fucking scan. You know what I mean? Whereas her, it's like, oh, I got a scan, so we'll see what's going on. But it looks like, you know, the rib is just really bruised. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, yeah, I can see that, but I'm not going to tell her, you know what I mean? Like, I could see why it was happening because it happened over and over again. 3 low bar days, big rib girl, falling forward, SBD belt, all those things, you know what I'm saying? That's just going to be a lot of pressure built up there. So I let, during into Nats, and Meg's mindset's so good and she gives herself a break now where she never used to in the past. Nats wasn't a very good performance. She still made it to Worlds. She's still happy that she got on the platform, but we had to really divert the last few days of the prep, especially because she didn't know on the Monday if she was going to be able to compete. And she still got to compete, but she just allows herself to be injured now and be okay with it. Or it's not the end of the day kind of thing. And from my perspective, it's way easier to deal with that than a lifter who catastrophizes things. Do you know what I'm saying? Because we can make decisions a lot easier. Then it didn't happen going into Worlds, but we still ran into load management problems again. But with it all, I let her take the wheel with it. She'll tell me what she can and she can't do. Does that make sense? I
guess a bit more order regulation for her, like being a bit more autonomous.
It's just a bit more. Yes, but no. It's just more the type of relationship where Meg will do what she wants to do. I'm not going to tell her what to do. Whereas other athletes will say, "What do I do? What do I do?" You know what I mean? Whereas it's more of a collaboration with her and I. So now it's like she had really good momentum, tweaked her back again. She still saying to Tom and I that she can't figure out what's going on, but she's at that stage of her lifting career where she's not freaking out about it anymore. It's like when she did that nationals, she said she was in bed for like 2 weeks after, and having twins at the same time. So she said she's never going to put herself through that again.
Yeah, that's brutal. Do you think that's just an experience thing where she's done so many comps and she's been through this so many times, or do you think it was just a shift in mindset?
I think her values are different now. So she values being able to play with her kids more than... so going into Worlds, working with the sports psych to help her value her lifting more, because she wasn't sure who she was in terms of, you know, am I an athlete who pushes myself 100% because I want to be, but I need to be there for the girls, and then I've got a husband and all that stuff. So she allowed to push herself. She allowed to push herself more for Worlds, and I know she will push herself more when we get through this training bit. But it was more like she doesn't want to make the dumb choices she made before to get herself in that position that she was in. Because at the end of the day, she made a choice to keep pushing. And at the end of the day, the coach that she was with at the time allowed her to do that. So then me understanding that she doesn't ever want to do that again allows me to be able to communicate with her and give her the ability to decide whether or not she pushes or pulls back.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because otherwise, if I said, no, you got to do this, and she'll say, well, I can't, and that's okay to say that. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Whereas other lifters will look for me, what do I do? Well, then I'm forced to tell them what to do. You get what I mean? I prefer the whole I'll give you the wheel type thing. You know your body and you know where you're at. I'll just help guide you there.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It works really well with pain management with athletes, because they become more autonomous and they value their own body more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In terms of, okay, I'll get myself through this. Can you I'll let you know when I need you to help me to do that.
Yeah, because they know obviously their body best and knowing what they can do.
Yeah.
They're also experiencing the pain and the niggle at that point in time,
Yeah.
so they can feel, what's going on.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess how's things been going through with Sam as well?
Sam's
Anything
great.
different?
I feel like in terms of body and where it's at the moment, it's doing really well. It's more a load management's going to need to change, because he's getting to the point where it's like he's in really big boy territory now.
Yeah.
So like I'm going to have to structure my tapers different next year, which is going to be, I can see that he's going to need 2-week breaks. And otherwise he's going to burn out. That's just it.
Yeah.
But other than that, same as everyone else, centre of mass issues at the moment. Getting chucked, but that's about it. But Sam came through with Tom and I years and years ago for long-standing chronic knee pain that back in the day took us a long time to get through, but wouldn't take us a long time to get through now. I've done the whole work through chronic pain with him. He's fine. Sam is a very patient lifter, so he took the time to get through his twisted self and make sure that he still looks after that. He's got 2 or 3 exercises in his program that will never, ever, ever leave. Camperoni, dips, and just lots of rowing.
Yep.
Those 3 things need to be in the program. Oh, and RDLs. He needs to
RDLs,
yeah. Those things will always stay in the program. The main lifts will probably change moving forward, because he's had a really big year with the way it's going now, but if he continues to do that next year, I think he's going to get cooked.
Yep.
That's about it. So I'll have to figure out how I can cycle that. And probably cooked CNS-wise, not his body is in very good shape.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously, having to compete 3 to 4 times a year or 2 to 3 times a year.
I just wouldn't want to be pulling 350 at the end of every 6 weeks, would you?
No way. No way. It's nasty.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking it's going to be like, I'm thinking in my head it's going to be like short, sharp blocks with quite a big deload.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe pulling 340 to 360 every 3 to 4 weeks, but being able to just go up and down like that, I don't know. I'm having a go. I'll have a go with a few things and see.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I guess wrapping up today, what would 2 or 3 things be that you'd give advice to athletes and or coaches to, I guess, for management of niggles, aches and pains? Listen.
That's it.
Just listen.
Listen.
Yeah.
Listen and know who you're dealing with first, and communicate around it. Not catastrophizing things straight away is a big one, and not afraid to either change things when they're needed or stick to your guns and just get help.
Yep.
I think too many coaches still are trying to work through their athletes' niggles, when in reality, if you just get help or with someone that, I know help is hard because there's not many good people around in terms of knowing where to put stuff for lifters, but I think just understanding the person that you're working with first, and understanding where their fatigue and pain may manifest from.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
And I'm going back to niggles. I'm not talking about popping your back deadlifting.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I guess because a lot of the issues we see would be cumulative niggles throughout a block, as opposed to my back's cooked after spinal on my deadlift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like understanding where it's coming from, like, you know, and explaining to the athlete where it's coming from. So a great example was when we worked through Barra's stuff not long ago. She's had the best prep she's ever had now because she's been able to take ownership of why her back feels cooked sometimes.
Yeah.
And now she understands that it's that, you know, those the non-negotiables in the program is what's helping her to stay pain-free, whereas before it wasn't quite understood, so it would be done for a little while and then forgotten about, and then it would just come back. Like there's no, the amount of arching that she's doing, and she's quite a stiff person, and I'm not going to be able to get rid of that stiffness, right? For her to understand that has been really good for her, and she's taken ownership a little bit more.
Yep.
So helping the athlete to take ownership, and them, like especially if it's a reoccurring issue, letting them know that this doesn't mean you're broken. It's just it needs to be managed because it's just a pattern that you might fall into, or you're not able to tolerate as much extension as, even though you're a big bench presser, you might not be able to tolerate as much as extension as you need to progress in bench press. So we need to give you a little bit more of the other way.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And explaining to them that these exercises aren't necessarily rehab; they're just maintenance.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the big thing that we've talked about before, that rehab isn't necessarily, we need to dial back to the barbell, just the bar. It is, you know, performance right the way through.
Yeah.
Just a lower load.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Do you have anything else to add in terms of keys?
In terms of keys.
The locksmith, give us something.
Probably just make like small modifications. Don't do like big overhauls if anything falls off. Make very small
I've made that
modifications.
mistake in the past. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
It's
You
easy to
just
do.
lose.
Like you just go, shit, I gotta change something, and then you end up changing all these little things everywhere, so
And
it's a
you don't
big
know what's
change.
Momentum
Yeah.
gone.
Change
Yeah.
little things as
Yeah.
much as you can, and just like watch and see what happens from that, and how the athlete like just responds to it.
Dave?
I guess similar to what everyone else has already touched on, but they know the athlete, so know their goals and know if, like Meg for example, if she has other priorities that are bigger than powerlifting.
Yeah.
And then if that's the case, then you know how hard to push or pull someone in that moment.
Yep.
And you know, make your decisions based around what their actual goals are and what's important to them.
Yeah, and like I've had conversations with athletes before where they've told me X, Y, Z, and then I've thought, shit, am I supposed to change things? And they've said, like, nah, I'm just telling you. Like, some people don't mind being in 1 out of 2 out of 10 pain.
Yeah.
They don't mind it. Whereas other people, you know, don't want to be, and they're like, okay, I don't like training in pain right now.
Yeah.
You know? Cool.
Awesome.
Cool.
Man.
Well, yeah, if anyone has any questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out via Instagram or contact us if you feel like you need rehab help, and we'll sort you out.
So yeah.
So, yeah.
Lovely.